Thanayi Jackson hippies, hip-hop intellectuals, and heavy metal queens. As a result, she abides by a punk rock pedagogy whereby anything can be learned, everything can be deconstructed, and nothing can be lost. Jackson is currently assistant professor of history at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and has written on Black Panther, Mad Max, and The Big Lebowski. She is completing a book on the political culture of Black office holding in Reconstruction, Wilmington, North Carolina. Let's give her a welcome round of applause.
Copy's my security blanket. So keep that over there. Keep track of myself right here. Watch. All right. Thank you all for having me here. Nice to see everybody here today. Really cool gathering. Also, today's the first day I've been able to really be around. So I've been thinking about the photography of Murray Bowles for a while. He's a Bay Area punk rock photographer. Starting in the late 70s up until his death in late 2019. And I've been thinking about how important his work is as a historical material culture for a very long time. And it wasn't until his death that I started really thinking, you know what, I should really do something about this. You know, I think that his photographs are something that we as intellectuals can think about as in a historical way, and as a way to use material culture, and as a way to kind of tell the story of subculture itself, and particularly California punk rock from, again, late 70s to 2019. This might sound like an exaggeration, but if you saw Murray at a show, you knew it was going to be a good one. He literally photographed every good show. I mean, it sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. Like at one point you would think he had a teleporter, because you would be at one show and then it might take you an hour to get somewhere else and he's already there taking photographs again, right? You would see him at maybe 3 different shows a night, and the next day you would see photographs from 5 different shows, right? So he was really always there. He drove around fast, and if I had never been in a car with him, I really would think he had a teleporter. And so I decided to think about Murray's photos as archive, and to think about what we can all kind of do with punk rock photography as an art form. And I'm going to particularly focus on Murray. So this is a sort of 2-part presentation. The first part, Murray as archive. The second part is going to be a taste of the kind of thing I think we can do with punk rock photography and Murray's photography in particular. So I would love to see my ultimate goal, more scholarship on punk rock using Murray. That's the goal. Okay, I'm going to actually play a brief clip. I've tried to make this interactive with some music too. Luckily, punk songs are only a minute each, so we can make that happen. Let's start with this one little clip. This is from Turn It Around, the story of East Bay Punk. It's a 2.5-hour documentary. I'm just going to show you about a 1.5-minute clip talking about Murray. Oops, no sound. Why no sound?
What shows were coming up, and then a week later, you know, if you missed that show, Murray Bowles would show you what you missed.
Murray, chronicler of the lost. Murray, king of the bay. Murray, our intrepid reporter. Murray, thank God somebody knows what we did last weekend and has the proof to hand it back to us.
He's just a completely like a monomaniacal photographer. Back then it was all real film, and he would take photos like
I tried to take pictures of people having fun or being aggressive, but not being jerks. Look, I don't have hardly any pictures of people beating up people and stuff like that. So I didn't want to be encouraging it, you know.
He was at every show. He knew everybody. He was this incredibly dispassionate observer of things on the outside, but then you'd see his picture and you felt like you knew him.
He was an artistic patron in the punk scene, in that he gave away his art, out of love, out of what he does, and out of love for the scene.
Okay. Didn't do it. Did not get my presenter view back, but maybe we can make this work anyway. Following up on the video clip, right? When I first watched that documentary, and as a friend of Murray, I was struck and almost seized by this comment he had about trying to take photographs of aggression but not violence. I'm paraphrasing there, right? And it just really captured me, and I thought, wow, what a really profound thing to say, especially about a medium like punk rock, right? And so I text him with a typical comment I often gave to Murray. Oh, Murray, you're such an anthropologist. I had been saying that phrase to Murray for decades before he eventually told me he really did have an anthropology degree from UC Santa Cruz. At which point I thought, wait, this really happened. And he told me that when I first started at UC Santa Cruz. And he said, oh, I went there about 15 years ago, and I actually have an anthropology degree, which I thought was hilarious. I wish I had followed up more in that text and asked him to say more words about this, because I'm obsessed with this concept. Can there be aggression without violence, right? And, is aggression bad? Is aggression a tool? And if so, how is it used? Is aggression art? And so I'm going to put a pin in that, and I want to come back to that at the end of this presentation. Okay, I want to get started kind of talking about Murray as archive for now, right? As mentioned in the video clip, Murray always made his photographs and his art accessible. In the beginning, in the old days, back before social media, back before the digital age, when it was all only film, it was true. You'd show up to the next event the next weekend and figure out what you did last weekend. And what would happen was Murray would be there with a shoebox of black and whites. And you would flip through the shoebox, you would have multiple prints, and you could purchase a photo. If the picture is of you, he'd just hand it to you. If otherwise, you could flip through the box and purchase a photo for 10 cents. It's essentially the cost of the photo paper and the chemicals and the stuff he needed to use the darkroom to make photographs, right? And I'm telling you, it's like a precursor to what will eventually become something like Instagram. Because it's an underground scene. It's not like you're gonna pick up Rolling Stone and see these bands in this magazine. You knew you were famous because Murray had a photograph of you in this shoebox of pictures, right? So you're flipping through this thing, oh, there's so-and-so. I mean, people literally became famous before your eyes just because their black and white was in this shoebox. I mean, you're not just gonna pick up photographs of yourself. You're going to buy these amazing photographs from these shows and maybe make a collage at home or make your own little thing, but you're gonna sort of have them so that, at the different punk houses you go to, you're going to see these photographs and kind of know, you immediately recognize which bands it is and who it is. And it really does sort of become this precursor, I feel like. It predicts exactly what underground communities are gonna do once social media comes along. His Instagram looks just like his shoebox used to, right? You go to his Instagram now, with some food involved too that you probably wouldn't get in the shoebox otherwise. Once the digital age comes around, Murray did two things that I thought were fascinating. He expanded to color. You could get black and white and color from him, which I always imagined in my head might have been like a darkroom thing, just different chemicals, right? It's more expensive to print that kind of stuff before. But he started a P-base, which is like Murray Bull's P-base. It's a place digitally online where you can house your photographs if you're a photographer or a collector or whatnot. And his P-base, exactly like the shoebox was, became the place you went to get a regathering of these shows and these different things you had gone to. Now, not even 10 cents, totally for free. So this idea that he's giving away this art is absolutely true, and it's a really fascinating sort of democratization of the community itself, right? And it really reflects a community that is about not being consumerist, right? It's sort of an anti-consumerist way to make people punk rock famous, if you will, right? Like you do not have to purchase these things and you still go there all the time to look at them. And this is before even Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. He has this P-base going. So, as archive, the P-base is out there. Anyone can use it. It's out there, it's free, you can log on. Murray Bowles P-base. He has some older stuff he had started downloading before he passed away, but he has from 2001 up through 2019, I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs. And I was just really struck when I went to start doing this work, how many comments are on this thing, hundreds of people saying, you chronicled our history, you're a historian. So it's this really interactive way. Not only can you see his photographs on P-base, but you can see the community themselves commenting on this collection. So it's fascinating. On his photographs as archive shoebox style, I think there really is a place. I mean, I think that all of us have seen different collections of punk photography starting to be housed at different universities or museums and the like. This is a prime candidate. You know, in this documentary that I pulled the clip from, they talk a lot about, again, he's mainly Bay Area, but especially East Bay and South Bay. There's a big conversation about Berkeley as the place where this kind of thing started. Wow, wouldn't that be cool if Murray's photos were archived at Berkeley. Cal State East Bay is also an amazing school. UC Santa Cruz, he went there, but it's a little outside of the area. So I do think that these photographs could be an excellent way for us to, again, use the work to do the work. Okay, part 2. Again, I'm nervous to do this, but I'm going to click out of this to try to get my presenter view back. How do I do that? View. Anybody have a... I can just click through, it'll be easier if I have presenter view. Should I close and open back up? Or? Okay. That wasn't the best idea, was it? Bear with me. Sorry about this. Perfect. Thank you for your questions. Okay, a taste of the kind of work I think that we can do with photographs like Murray's. I went through all of his photographs, and I could have just focused on shows that were at, you know, venues like Gilman is probably his most famous venue that's been photographed. But I decided that I was super interested in his photography of house shows. So punk houses and house shows. And in California, house shows are a really big thing. I think they are everywhere, but I think that in suburban California, suburban punk rock as a specific genre focuses on house shows. And I started thinking to myself how interesting, the more I looked at his photographs of house shows, the more interesting I thought they were. And what they really spoke to me about was this sort of iconoclasm of populux. It was the idea I got in my head. So thinking about populux as sort of the American dream, the 1950s, growth of the suburbs. By 1960, more people live in suburbs than in any other place, right? So it's like that, or if we think about American history as originally rural, and then by the 20th century, more people live in cities than in the country. Well, by the 1960s, more people live in the suburbs than the city or the country. And it's this super interesting moment because I think that that is also the place where the American dream sort of takes root. Like when people think about the American dream, the white picket fence, we're no longer talking about owning property as a place of like capitalist production. We're talking about owning property as your private standalone home where you can have a white picket fence. You have the, nuclear family, not extended family, the nuclear family, right? Heteronormative mother and father, 2.5 kids, the whole bit. And that is so prominent in our ideations about what the American dream is that I would say it's iconic. Fair, right? It's iconic, right? And so when I looked at what punk rockers were doing in houses, because I don't remember any of that, no, just kidding, sorry. I felt like this is iconoclastic, right? Like this is purposely being done in a way that totally turns the iconic white picket fence, American family household completely on its head. So as a taste of what can be done with this, I think that looking at, Populux itself, and looking at images maybe side by side of the American Dream Populux next to all of a sudden punk houses. And there's been some incredible work already done, lots of work on what punk houses mean, photojournal books with photographs of punk houses. And so I think that using this lens of iconoclasm, that somebody with an anthropology degree, with a queer eye, is photographing 4 decades of shows in punk houses and thinking about them as someone who grew up in Populux time, right? I think that there's something there that can further be studied. So let me put it on this one now in case it doesn't bring me back to. I'm gonna try something a little bit different first, and hopefully it brings me back nicely. Okay.
Want to be classified.
Shit kickers are great too, but that's for another time. Okay. Now that I've done that, I want to just kind of try to take us back through that a little bit as well. Wish me luck. Yes. Okay. I tried to organize these when I was thinking about it, right? Room by room, if you will. Because I really do think that that's how this thing kind of looks. So the first ones I kind of took you through were the living room, right? Sort of this TV moment here. The living room as this, again, nuclear family space, television as the center of the room, and it gets you know, changed around. Where the television should be, there's a drum set and a little girl, that's desirable. She's tiny, she's 18 now, so let's. But it changes the concept of how you look at the room, even though his eye is still capturing it in the same way. So that you have the framework where the nuclear family would be, where the TV would be, where the couch and furniture should be, but instead there's this sort of band space here. It's also sort of interesting to think about, again, this living room space as being very calm, you know, tranquilo here, and then you see, right, this like other space, like you can tell it's, the painting even kind of gets me in this one because the walls are painted. This isn't like your standard white painting, even though this is probably a rented house by what's really an expanded family of probably like, you know, 8 to 10 punk rockers living in this single family home. Still, the trim is painted, the walls are painted red, even though like the F word is in prime, you know, visual material there. But it's still looking like what we expect to see in a portraiture of suburban populace, you know, iconography, iconoclasm. Thank you. The other, just in the interest of time, I want to sort of fast forward to this idea of the backyard because I wanted to sort of point out the differences between the backyard and the kitchen, or some of my other ones. And so to sort of race through this, the backyard and the kitchen as sort of being a sex segregated space, right? The kitchen, the one I have that really kind of demonstrates the kitchen space as opposed to this, is this old Hardee's ad. Women don't leave the kitchen, you know? And here she is sort of looking outside where the male space is, right? Which is, I think, one of the more interesting things to be turned upside down in this photography, because again, it's extremely mixed space. So that women aren't where women should be, or if they are, they aren't doing what women should be doing, and men aren't where men should be, or if they are, they're not necessarily doing what men should be doing, and it gets extremely mixed up. And alongside that is this idea about the nuclear family sort of being exploded into what many people would consider their punk family, right? You move out of your home, your you know, family, nuclear family home, and especially because, you know, Populux is something that couldn't last. It was something they noticed at the time, like houses are not affordable for general people. The majority of people cannot afford a single family home right when they move out of their house. And so this idea that Populux is on the decline, I see these photographs as a way that's capturing this middle ground between, is it really ending? Can we really do this? Yes, it's really ending. And now it looks like something completely different, right?
Yeah.
Since I'm out of time, back to this point about aggression. And I'm gonna sort of move us back to the backyard, this point Murray had about, you know, whether or not aggression is always violence. And whether or not Populux itself is aggressive. The way I started thinking about that, right, I mean, so much of how we imagine Populux, which was always a myth, and so much of how we imagine Populux is no problems, you know, everything's nice, everybody gets along, everybody's happy, right? It's almost like the negation of aggression or violence itself is almost violent, right? I mean, it's this idea that you should be happy, what's wrong with you? And this I mean, punk rock as an entire genre, I'm not the first to say this, there's ample work done on this, talking about sort of the inability to fit into the myth of Populux almost creates this art form. And I think it's so fascinating to see it in Populux space, to see it in the house, to see it in the yard, right? And this backyard space being so interesting. I'm going to do one more song that is speaking to this idea, this concept of the end of Populux and how it transitions out of here. And I'm using my personal favorite East Bay punk band, which is Blatz. Have to do this. And so again, this speaks to this idea of the nuclear family, what Populux space is, and how it's envisioned by punk itself, and how the photographs, I think, of Murray play into this.
The year with the